The mountains of Afghanistan are not quiet places. The wind cuts through the valleys like a knife, carrying the echo of gunfire, the bark of orders shouted in foreign tongues, and the silence of men who never return. In 2005, 4 Navy SEALs moved silently through those jagged ridges. Their mission was clear, but the odds were impossible. Hours later, only one of them would be alive to tell the story. His name was Marcus Luttrell. The making of a lone survivor didn't start in the Hindu Kush. It started years earlier, in a dusty corner of Texas, with a boy who seemed too weak for the life he dreamed of. Marcus was small for his age, often sick, the kind of child others doubted would ever grow into strength. But he had something that made all the difference: his twin brother, Morgan. Together, they built themselves in the harshest way 2 boys could, training not in gyms or with coaches, but in fields and backyards under the burning Texas sun. Push-ups until their arms shook, runs until their legs collapsed, falls that left bruises, but no pity. If Marcus slowed down, Morgan drove him harder. If Morgan stumbled, Marcus pulled him back up. They learned the most important truth of their lives. You don't quit because it hurts. You quit when you're dead. From his teenage years, Marcus knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted to be a Navy SEAL, America's most elite warriors, men who did the impossible, who carried silence and courage that could not be faked. He read every book he could find, studied stories of Vietnam-era SEALs, and repeated one promise to himself: one day, I'll wear that trident. But wanting something and earning it are oceans apart. The SEAL pipeline is designed to break men, and it breaks almost all of them. Marcus entered training in his early 20s, stepping into a world where the standard isn't excellence, it's survival. Hell Week, 5.5 days with almost no sleep. The Pacific pounding against your chest in the middle of the night, salt eating at every open wound, carrying a log heavier than your own body with 6 men at your side, all of you staggering, all of you asking yourselves if you can go another step. Instructors screaming in your ear, do you want to quit? Most men do. 2 out of 3 never make it. But Marcus didn't quit. He leaned on the lesson his brother had drilled into him. Pain is temporary. Quitting lasts forever. His body failed 100 times, but his will didn't. And when it was over, when the instructors pinned the golden SEAL trident to his chest, Marcus Luttrell was no longer the weak boy from Texas. He was a Navy SEAL. In the teams, he found more than comrades. He found brothers. Men like Michael Murphy, Danny Dietz, and Matt Axelson. Together, they trained, fought, laughed. They learned each other's strengths, covered each other's weaknesses, and built trust that needed no words. In the SEALs, you don't fight for politics or speeches. You fight for the man to your left and the man to your right. And Marcus understood that bond with every fiber of his being. But war was waiting. And in 2005, it came in the form of Operation Red Wings, a mission deep in Taliban territory. A mission that would test every lesson Marcus had ever learned. In the summer of 2005, the war in Afghanistan had entered a new phase. The Taliban were resurging, regrouping in remote valleys where American forces rarely ventured. Intelligence pointed to a brutal local commander named Ahmad Shah, whose fighters had been ambushing Marines and terrorizing villages in the Kunar province. The mission was clear. Insert a small SEAL team into the mountains, locate Shah, confirm his presence, and if possible, eliminate him. 4 men were chosen for the task. Lieutenant Michael Murphy, the team leader; Danny Dietz, the communications specialist; Matthew Axelson, a quiet but deadly accurate shooter; and Marcus Luttrell, corpsman, medic, and rifleman. Together, they boarded the helicopter that would carry them deep into enemy territory. It wasn't just another mission, it was the kind of operation that SEALs are built for: small, surgical, and impossibly dangerous. As the helicopter blades hammered the night air, Marcus sat in silence, going through his mental checklist: weapons, ammo, radio, medical kit. But more than gear, he checked himself. Was he ready? Was he steady? The answer was yes. This is what he had trained for. This was the reason he had endured Hell Week, the reason he had fought through years of pain and doubt. The insertion went smoothly. The team slid down into the jagged mountains, carrying more weight than most men could stand, climbing through terrain that punished every step. The Afghan mountains are deceptive. They look barren from a distance, but up close, they are alive with shadows, ridges, and caves that conceal dangers at every turn. For hours, the SEALs moved in silence, taking up a concealed position above a village rumored to shelter Shah's fighters. The heat pressed down during the day. The cold cut through them at night. They rationed water carefully, knowing resupply was not guaranteed. It was during this waiting that fate played its cruel hand. A group of Afghan goat herders stumbled directly into the SEALs' hideout. Old men, young boys, unarmed, not fighters, not threats, just villagers, leading their animals along mountain paths that had been used for centuries. The SEALs faced a decision that would define everything that followed. Rules of engagement were clear. Unarmed civilians could not be killed. If they let the herders go, word would almost certainly spread, and Shah's fighters would come for them. If they killed them, the mission might continue, but at a cost to their honor, their rules, and their souls. Michael Murphy gathered his men. They whispered in the dust, the sound of goats clattering in the background. They weighed options, risks, consequences. Marcus later admitted that in his heart, he knew what would happen if they released them. The mountains had no secrets. Shah's fighters would know. But in the end, they made the choice their code demanded. They would not murder unarmed civilians. The herders were released. The SEALs watched them disappear down the trail, goats clattering, the echoes fading into silence. For a while, there was nothing but the wind. Then Marcus felt it, that deep, gnawing certainty that death was coming. In the hours that followed, that certainty became reality. The first sign was the sound. It began as a low murmur, the kind the mountains sometimes carry when wind shifts. But this was not the wind. It was the rhythm of boots, the clatter of rifles, the growl of voices gathering in numbers too large to mistake. Then the shots came. From the ridges above, from the trees, from the rocks, fire poured down on the 4 Americans. Bullets ripped through branches, kicking dirt and stone into the air. Marcus hit the ground, returning fire as fast as he could, his rifle barking back into the chaos. The team spread out, each man fighting not just for his own life, but for the man next to him. The enemy wasn't a handful, it was a flood. More than 100 Taliban fighters surrounding them, pressing in with overwhelming firepower. 4 men against an army. The battle turned brutal in seconds. Grenades rained down, explosions throwing dirt and shrapnel. Marcus and his brothers fought with everything they had, every round, every ounce of training. They shifted positions, firing, moving, then firing again. Each time they pulled back, it was down another slope, rolling, crashing through rock and thorn. Marcus smashed against boulders so hard that his teeth cracked. Bones broke, blood ran. But there was no time to notice. Danny Dietz took a round, his body jerking back, but he refused to stop. Even bleeding, he clung to the radio, desperately trying to call for help. The signal was weak, fading. Still he pressed, his voice raw, as he tried again and again to reach someone. His last act was duty, getting out a call that might bring salvation. Moments later, the fire consumed him. Danny was gone. Matt Axelson kept shooting even after he was gravely wounded. His face was bloodied, vision blurring, but his rifle never left his hands. Each pull of the trigger was defiance, each burst a reminder that even dying, a SEAL does not surrender. Then came Michael Murphy's decision. Their leader knew the only way to get help was to find a signal, and that meant stepping into the open. He turned to Marcus, calm even as bullets screamed overhead, and said, "I'm going up." Marcus begged him not to, but Murphy just nodded, his voice steady. "We're not going to make it otherwise." Murphy broke cover, climbing into a clearing, pulling the radio to his ear. Rounds tore into him, but he stood tall, calling in coordinates, giving his position, asking for reinforcements. His final words, over the crackling line, were two simple syllables: "Thank you." Then he dropped the handset and kept firing until he couldn't anymore. Above them, help was already on the way. A helicopter carrying 16 men SEALs and Army Night Stalkers raced toward the fight. But fate was merciless. As the bird neared the valley, a rocket-propelled grenade streaked through the air and struck. In a fireball, the helicopter spiraled and slammed into the mountain. All 16 souls were lost. For Marcus Luttrell, the world narrowed. His brothers were gone. His body was broken, riddled with shrapnel, his spine fractured, his face torn. But he was alive. Somehow, impossibly, he was alive. And now, he was alone. The mountains went silent again. But it wasn't peace. It was the silence of aftermath, the kind that presses down, heavier than gunfire. Marcus lay broken among the rocks, his ears ringing, blood running into the dust. Every breath felt like glass in his lungs. His brothers were gone. The Taliban were hunting, and the only thing between him and death was sheer will. He forced himself to move, crawling at first, dragging his shattered body inch by inch across the stones. Each shift sent pain lancing through his spine, but he knew stillness was death. He chewed leaves and grass for moisture, sucked muddy water from puddles, anything to stay alive. His mouth was split open, his face battered, but he kept going. The Taliban searched the hills, calling to each other, firing into shadows. Marcus buried himself under logs, smeared dirt over his skin, hid among thorn bushes. He could hear their voices so close that he held his breath, praying they wouldn't see him. More than once, he thought it was over. More than once, he nearly let go. But each time, something deeper pulled him forward. A voice that whispered, "Not yet, not here." After days of crawling through the unforgiving terrain, Marcus was found by an Afghan villager. The man belonged to a Pashtun tribe that lived by an ancient code called Pashtunwali, a law of honor that demanded they protect anyone, even an enemy, who sought refuge. The villager carried Marcus back to his home, cleaned his wounds, and stood guard with his tribe against Taliban fighters who demanded they hand the American over. It was a strange kind of salvation protected not by soldiers, but by strangers, bound to a code older than the war itself. Marcus later said that without them, he wouldn't have lasted another night. Eventually, word reached American forces. A rescue team moved into the village, and Marcus Luttrell was carried out, scarred, broken, but alive, the only survivor of Operation Red Wings. When he returned home, his body carried the marks of the mountains, shrapnel, broken bones, a permanent limp. But the heavier wounds were inside. Survivor's guilt. Nightmares of Murphy, Dietz, Axelson. The sound of the helicopter exploding replayed in his mind for years. And yet, Marcus told their story. He wrote it down in Lone Survivor. Not for fame, but to make sure the world knew the kind of men his brothers were. He often said, "They fought to the death, and they did it for me. The least I can do is tell people who they were." His life after the war became a living testimony, not of his survival, but of their sacrifice. He carried their memory like a second heartbeat. Every time he spoke, every time he looked at a new generation of soldiers, his message was the same. Never quit, never forget, always fight for the man next to you. The boy from Texas who once seemed too small, too weak, had become the last voice of one of the most heroic and tragic battles of the war. He was a reminder that courage isn't about living without fear. It's about standing your ground when fear is all that remains. And for Marcus Luttrell, that ground will forever be a mountainside in Afghanistan, where 4 men stood against an army and 1 lived to carry their story.